This was an aircraft that the entire aviation industry was very proud to build. It took many years to build, and more than 30 years it remained in service without any major issues. It was the world's first and last supersonic passenger aircraft model, which is known as Concorde today. Supersonic means it flies at a speed faster than the speed of sound, and in just 3.5 hours, it takes passengers across the Atlantic Ocean. But the world kept watching when on 25th of July, 2000, just 121 seconds, its 30-year-old service was overpowered, and this model of the plane had to be discontinued forever. There was no issue of any kind with the aircraft before takeoff, but when the investigation took place after the crash, a pencil-sized metal strip was blamed. But how did a small metal strip destroy a 110,000 kilograms plane? After this, why was Concorde discontinued? This is the story of Air France Flight 4590, which had to go from Paris's Charles de Gaulle Airport to the airport of John F. Kennedy in New York. There were a total of 100 passengers, 6 cabin crew, and 3 pilots present in it. This legendary aircraft was BAC Concorde, which is considered to be the most dashing aircraft ever in the aviation industry. Even many people called it a miracle of engineering. The biggest reason for this was that it flew at double the speed of a normal passenger aircraft, due to which the journey between America and Europe could be covered in just 3.5 hours instead of 7 hours. The speed of sound, which is 1235 kilometers per hour, Concorde used to fly even faster than this speed at supersonic speed. Its top speed at 2180 kilometers per hour has been recorded. The reason behind flying at this speed was the amazing wing design of the Concorde, which is called delta wing. This wing is usually used on fighter jets, but the engineers had installed it in Concorde for the same reason, so that it can fly at supersonic speed like fighter jets. But the problem with this delta wing is that it needs a lot of speed for takeoff, and not just speed, but the angle of attack of the plane. It's the time when the nose of the plane rises upwards for takeoff. If seen for comparison, the angle of attack in the takeoff of a normal passenger plane is very less. Whereas in Concorde, the angle of attack is so high that the pilot cannot see the runway ahead. That is why the nose of the Concorde has been kept flexible, which was lowered at the time of takeoff so that the pilot can see everything ahead. Apart from the angle of attack, the speed Boeing 737 is done at 140 knots or 160 kilometers per hour, whereas for takeoff, Concorde has speed up to 200 knots, which is 230 kilometers per hour. This higher speed put excessive pressure on the tires of Concorde, and in many incidents, their tires also burst. In its 30 years of service, Concorde's tire bursts were recorded 57 times, but there was no significant damage in incidents. Now, because this tire bursts at high speed, the pieces of the tire would hit the upper wing at the speed of a bullet, causing a risk of wing puncture, and because, like other aircraft, fuel is stored in the Concorde's wings, any minor tire burst could cause fuel leakage. To avoid this, the engineers made some changes in the landing gear of the early models of the Concorde and made the tires stronger. Due to these changes, the issue of tire bursts in the Concorde was solved to a great extent. This technical information is enough to understand the accident of Air France 4590. On July 25, 2000, at 2:35 p.m., Air France Flight 4590 was ready for departure. Both the pilots and a flight engineer, all of them were quite experienced. After passenger boarding, they contacted to the tower for going on runway. Paris Airport has 2 runways, 26R and 26L. 26R is the longer runway, and the Concorde also wanted a longer runway for takeoff, so the control tower gave them permission to go up to 26R. Flight 4590 went through taxiway Romeo and got aligned at 26R. But the problem was that Continental Airlines DC-10 aircraft was already ready for takeoff at 26R, the same runway on which the Concorde was allowed to take off. First, DC-10 took off, and after that, it was the turn of Air France's Concorde. During this, the captain of Concorde did flight checks, which is a normal procedure before takeoff. In these flight checks, the weight and fuel of the plane were again reviewed because takeoff depends on this. When Continental Airlines DC-10 started its takeoff, a small metal strip separated from its right engine and fell on the runway. The pilot of this plane did not notice anything like this. The time difference between the takeoff of DC-10 and Concorde aircraft was so small that there was no time for runway inspection, and at that time runway inspections were done only twice a day at the airports of France. Now, it was the turn of Air France, 4-590. After getting permission for takeoff from the control tower, they engaged the thrust levers, which meant that now all 4 engines were running at their full power. At this time, it was 2:42 p.m., and this started next 121 seconds, which in the coming time overpowered the 30 years service of Concorde. Concorde, now on 26R, had started gaining speed. After 24 seconds, the first officer informed the captain that all 4 engines were working properly. After 11 seconds, the first officer gave a signal of V1 to the captain, which means that this takeoff cannot be aborted. Now 35 seconds had passed for Concorde, and it had crossed the runway of 1,700 meters. At 2:43 p.m. and 9 seconds, Concorde took a slight left turn. All this information was being stored in the Concorde's flight recorder, which is also called a black box. The pilot did not make the left turn of the Concorde, rather its left landing gear had climbed over the metal strip which had fallen off from the engine of DC-10, and in the next second, the left wheel of Concorde, which already had so much pressure on it, burst with a bang. The question arises here that how did the investigation team come to know that the same metal strip was the cause of the tire burst of Concorde? In fact, the second when plane took a left turn, the location recorded in the flight recorder was the same location from where the investigation team had found the metal strip, so there was a 99% chance that this was the same place. Concorde's tire had burst due to a metal strip, but later in the video it will be proved that this metal strip was of DC-10 only. Concorde's leftmost tire had burst, and all this happened so quickly that no one even noticed it. In the next moment, what happened, which the engineers had already suspected, the pieces of the tire hit the fuel tank with such speed that the fuel tank burst, and now the fuel started to leak due to pressure. For some reason, a fire also broke out immediately. At this moment, the aircraft began to drag to the left, and the captain pressed the right pedal to set it to vibrate. Unaware that his aircraft was on fire, the air traffic controller noticed that the Concorde was on fire. Both the left engines of the plane stopped due to the smoke coming out of the fire. There is an air intake on the front side of the jet engine from where the engine sucks the air in and compresses it. When smoke started coming in, the compressor got choked, due to which both the engines failed. The flight engineer immediately started the emergency procedure. Meanwhile, the ATC also told the captain that a fire was raging in his aircraft and he should immediately return to the airfield. The Concorde of Air France 4590 was now dependent on only 2 right engines. Due to the shutdown of both the engines, the Concorde was not able to gain much altitude, and it was very difficult for it to maintain its current altitude. The fire in the left wing started melting the flap as well, due to which the Concorde started turning towards the left. The captain turned the ship to the right to set her vibration, but due to this, the speed was decreasing further, and the speed was the only thing that could have saved Concorde at this time. Finally, at 121 seconds, 2:44 and 31 seconds, Concorde's left turn increased too much, and while reducing altitude, it collided with a hotel building. This accident took the lives of 109 passengers and 4 people on the ground. Immediately after the accident, the crash site was sealed and the investigation was started. With the help of the flight data recorder, the investigators searched the part of the runway from where the Concorde's left turn had taken place and found the metal strip lying there. When they inspected DC-10 of Continental Airlines, the metal plate was actually missing in its right engine. When the investigation team checked the maintenance history of Continental Airlines, it was found that this metal strip was against the SOP of manufacturer. It was repaired 2 times, It has 37 times drilling holes and was fitted in a haphazard manner. And this was the reason why it could not tolerate the vibration of the engine and broke and fell on the runway. After this, all the remaining Concorde aircraft were also grounded because their tire bursts due to high speed, which was a well-known issue, had now taken the lives of 113 people. Engineers could not find any specific solution for this for the next several months. Next year. In 2001, after the 9/11 attacks, passengers all over the world stopped traveling by plane out of fear. The ticket price of Concorde, which was already much higher than that of a normal plane, was not possible to operate again in this situation. This was the point when the Pebble was discontinued forever and kept in the museum. Perhaps in the future, humans will be able to travel at supersonic speed again. But for now, we only know that there have been 31 years in history in which humans have been able to travel at supersonic speeds. We used to travel faster than the speed of 200 kilometers. Hope you all will like and share this video. Thank you very much for your loving comments. See you in the next great video.